Meanwhile, President Biden is busy drumming up support in the battleground state of Nevada. We're looking at President Biden giving remarks right now, speaking at the 115th National Convention of the NAACP in Las Vegas. Quentin Fulks is here in Milwaukee. Quentin is the principal deputy campaign manager for the Biden campaign. Quentin, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Give me your assessment from the Biden-Harris campaign's perspective on day one of the Republican National Convention.
Well, thank you for having me, Major. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Look, I mean, I think we saw yesterday Republicans do exactly what we thought they would. We believed that they would go to Milwaukee or come to Milwaukee and double down on an extreme divisive agenda that is one of taking away rights from millions of Americans, doubling down on policies that are out of touch, putting the wealthiest and big corporations ahead of the middle class, doubling down on ripping away health care from American citizens, doubling down on making sure that Big Pharma is allowed to continue to cheat Americans and charge exorbitant prices. So unfortunately, they did exactly what we thought. And it had been rumored for months that Donald Trump was looking at J.D. Vance for a potential VP nominee pick, and he confirmed that. And obviously, J.D. Vance is just a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. I think it's important that American voters take a step back and ask themselves why Donald Trump had to pick a new vice presidential nominee. It is because his first one would not certify the results of a legitimate election, and J.D. Vance has said that he would do as such. And so I think we saw exactly what we had been anticipating from the Republican Party for many, many weeks.
Quentin, as you well know, last night the conversation around J.D. Vance and his potential political value to the Trump ticket was because of his upbringing in Ohio, because of the book Hillbilly Elegy and the movie made about that, he can speak in ways that maybe Trump can't. That is a persuasive pitch to voters specifically in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Evaluate that.
They only know one language, and that's MAGA extremism. It is both of them doubling down. He will continue to do just as Donald Trump said. He's not in the business of correcting Trump or moderating Trump on any of these issues. In fact, he might be even more extreme. I mean, when talking about abortion in cases of rape and incest for women to get those type of treatments after those incidents, he said two wrongs don't make a right. He has doubled down on some of the most out-of-touch policy stances, and I think that we're going to continue to see him stand right beside Donald Trump's side in opposition to what he said. So I think it's interesting that he's lost his morals and his character now that he's been named VP, because that's not what he was saying several months ago or a couple of years ago when he was running for office.
Quentin, I know you know this phrase, let's listen to the principal. The principal in this case would be President Biden. He's in Las Vegas. Let's listen in.
Any one president has in one term. He left no room for us to do what we should be doing. Invest in things that affect people's lives, like child care, elder care, and so much more, that grow the economy and help people. His mismanagement of the pandemic was especially devastating to black communities. Oh, I know, because in other countries, other communities of color. That economic crisis drove up black unemployment, decimated small black businesses, and you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder. Donald Trump called for the National Guard to go after you. What in the hell's the matter with this man? Oh, I'm serious. Go figure. From a guy who spread the birthism lie against Barack Obama, saying he wasn't born in America and he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Of course, here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character. Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States. I know what a black job is. The first black president in American history, Barack Obama. I was vice president to Barack, and she is my vice president. I nominated the first black Secretary of Defense in American history. He's doing one hell of a job. I nominated the first black woman to the United States Supreme Court. It matters. It matters. And I promised myself, and I promised America, that my administration would look like America. And I'm proud that we have the most diverse administration in all of history that taps into the full talents of our nation. That's who we are. These guys don't get it. That's why we're so successful. No, I'm serious. That's what makes us the greatest nation on earth. That's not hyperbole. Folks, it's because of you that I'm president and Kamala Harris is vice president. And by the way, she's not only a great vice president, she could be president of the United States. Thank you. With the help of the NAACP, the black elected members in the Congress, we've gotten so much done. Seriously. Presidential historian said we've gotten more done of consequence than any president since Franklin Roosevelt. Just think about where the black community was when I came into office. Think about how far the black community has come. But we still got a long way to go. COVID no longer controls our lives. Our economy is not figuratively, literally, the strongest economy in the world. Historic low black unemployment. Record growth of black small businesses. Let me say this again, because Trump is lying like hell about it. The black unemployment hit a record low under Biden-Harris administration. The first bill I passed would put $1,400 checks plus $300 checks per child, per family, per month in the pockets of people in this country to get them through the pandemic. Not Trump's administration. Kamala and I did that. We put more money in the pockets of than anyone. We cut black, and as a consequence, we cut black child poverty in half. And when we finally get through to people, my economic policy grows the economy when we spend money. Grows it. We grew the American economy to the strongest in the world. And I'm determined to make that tax cut permanent. No child should ever go hungry in America. And by the way, all the data shows is they can't let them tell us we drive up deficits. They drive up deficits, folks. When you have child care, guess what? Mom or dad can work. And the child can be safe. We're connecting black neighborhoods that were cut off with old highways and disinvestment decades ago. My city, Wilmington, Delaware, I-95 runs up through what used to be the black community, divided it, 6 lanes wide. We're going to make sure that the states want it. We're going to be able to pave over at the top of that and still have the highway. Connecting neighborhoods. We're removing, which is costly, every poisonous lead pipe in a house in America so every child can drink clean water without fear of brain damage. We're delivering high-speed and affordable broadband. No child should have to sit out in the parking lot with their moms in front of a McDonald's so they can get online to do their homework. And because of you, you're not only protecting Obamacare, you allowed me to increase it, making health care more affordable. We're putting, and by the way, more than it's ever been, millions of African Americans now have health care because of what we've done. We're putting home ownership within reach. How do you generate generational wealth, no matter what community you're from? I know how we did it when everything got stuck in Scranton and with no jobs. Moved to Delaware. Dad worked like hell so he could get down payment to buy a small house. That's how you build equity. As small as a 3-bedroom split-level home with 4 kids and a grandpa living with us. But it was a home, and he was able to build some equity. Look, we're making the most significant investment in climate ever in all of history. Including most significant action on environmental justice ever. Look, folks, think about this. My state of Delaware If you know, not many don't know my state. My state of Delaware has a Delaware River runs up along, it's jagged. But at the top of the state, there's a half moon, and it comes up along more oil refineries on the other side of that half moon.
We're going to go back to our conversation with Principal Deputy Campaign Manager Quentin Fulks of the Biden-Harris campaign. Quentin, you've been listening to President Biden address the 115th convention of the NAACP. A moment ago, the president leaned, I think, with some new rhetorical flourishes into the concept of something that former President Trump said at the first debate, black jobs. Your reaction, is that something that voters are going to hear more and more of from the president?
Absolutely, and I think it's quite a difference in between where these candidates choose to spend their time and who they spend their time talking to. Donald Trump continues to double down on racist tropes, continuing to think that he can win over black voters by selling sneakers and cologne and saying that they are with him because he is a convicted felon, versus what you just heard President Biden lay out. And I think that it's very, very clear that when Donald Trump talks about black jobs, he means menial labor. As he relates it to immigrants taking black jobs. It's a disgrace. And I think that we see what President Biden sees as a black job. It's Secretary of Defense. It's the Supreme Court Justice. It's the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States. And so we're going to continue to take that message. And Donald Trump, unsurprisingly, probably doesn't know what any jobs is, given the fact that he left office having created a negative amount of jobs, one of the only other presidents to do that besides Herbert Hoover. So you are definitely going to continue to see our campaign and the president take that message directly to American voters.
Quentin, as you well know, many Democrats have been urging the campaign to intensify its messaging, its vigor, but also put some specific policy proposals out responsive to our times. I want to ask you about a Washington Post story that has just gone up on the Washington Post website that says President Biden is preparing to announce recommendations for major changes to the Supreme Court. Can you shed any light on that?
Look, I'm not going to make any news tonight. I'll leave that to President Biden to do. But I think when it comes to talking about the issues and talking about what President Biden wants to do, I know he's focused on making sure that he's capping housing costs, rent cost increases. I know he's interested in making sure he passes the PRO Act. I know he's interested in making sure that he expands health care coverage and the Affordable Care Act. I know he's interested in making sure that he protects women's reproductive freedoms, continuing to expand on the work that he has done on climate change infrastructure. And so President Biden is going to remain focused on that, but I will let him make the news that he wants to make about any announcements in regards to the Supreme Court.
Quentin Fulks, Deputy Principal Campaign Manager for the Biden-Harris re-election campaign. We thank you very much for your time.